an incorrigible delinquent at times. Behave yourself, man!
A lot of race being discussed in the programme today. I'd like to say it was thematic planning, but it wasn't. However, it was exactly 50 years ago today that the Race Relations Act gained royal assent and became law. The law prohibited discrimination on grounds of colour, race or ethnic or national origins in public places. It was quite limited in its way, but it did mark a pretty big legal change. It was back in days when the phrase colour bar didn't refer to a hair dyeing salon. We asked the writer and poet Bejamin Zephaniah, who's a little older than the Act, to look back and at how far we've come. There is some bad language in this piece.
50 years ago, I was 7, and Britain was a very different place. There were colour bars. Landlords would refuse to rent to black families.
Most people are suspicious when they first meet something different. And immigrants are different.
There were pubs with signs of no blacks, no Irish, no dogs. And the law. Well, there was no law. People were free to be racist.
We want to keep Britain, keep it white as it should be.
The Race Relations Act of 1965 changed things. It was now illegal to discriminate in public on the grounds of colour, race, ethnic or national origins. But the law was limited. It was a civil and not a criminal offence, and it didn't cover housing and employment. 3 years later, the law was toughened up following Enoch Powell's infamous Rivers of Blood speech.
In this country, in 15 or 20 years' time, the black man will have the whip hand over the white man.
Notting Hill is now famous for its carnival, not the notorious race riots of 1958. This used to be the front line, a dangerous no-go area for some. But now, it's one of the trendiest, most multicultural parts of London. Time has moved on and racism has evolved. We don't really see gangs of racist thugs roaming the streets like they did back in the day. They now wear suits and ties. Some form political parties, some build websites, and some of them are academics.
The whites have become black, a particular sort of violent, destructive, nihilistic gangster culture has become the fashion.
Racists have become more sophisticated. Well, most of them have.
There was a big white racist man who just picked on me, basically. So he came and sat next to me on a patch train at 5:30 p.m. on the way to Liverpool. He went on my, peed on my stuff, and then he called me all of the names you can think of and more, and started doing like monkey sounds and, jungle sounds, and told me to get out of his country. His grandfather fought in the war so that people, dirty Africans like me with Ebola can get out. Nobody jumped to my rescue. I said, I was on there on my own for 45 minutes. It was only when I was physically assaulted, one person did actually one man finally came to my defense.
As an artist, it isn't enough for me to make more or less Indian work, or work that refers, if you like, to my past. What I'm interested in is how it is that one can be, one can rid oneself of that kind of colonial yoke. Something to do with this, both the expectation of oneself and the expectation given by a political, socio-political context that says, in order to be the cutting edge, on the cutting edge, you've got to deal with this question of your blackness. Well, actually, do you?
In my generation, I think we're used to the microaggressions, definitely used to not getting a job because your name is a certain name, or having people other you because your hair is different or you speak differently. Those kind of microaggressions, insidious racism. This kind of, what happened to me is kind of what we think happens in America, what we think happened to our parents and our grandparents.
I no longer have to run away from skinhead thugs, but I still get stopped by the police. On the whole, society is more accepting, but we still have institutional racism. company boardrooms are very white, and ethnic minority communities are still very suspicious of the police. After the death of Stephen Lawrence, the Macpherson report said the Met was institutionally racist, and that hasn't gone away. Black people are still disproportionately stopped and searched, and the amount of black people, like my cousin Mikey Powell, that die in custody is extremely worrying. It seems to me that we live in a society where we're always being told to fear someone, the other, those who are not like us. And the newest targets are migrants, those who David Cameron refers to as the swarm.
We also live in a time of a new kind of, does one call it racism? I think one does, really, Islamophobia. You know, it's as if it's given full measure. You're allowed to, you know, look at those people who wear a hijab or whatever else it is and say, are you going to bomb me now? You know, how many incidents have there been recently? And how watchful do we have to be? Very, I say.
This is just one of the many racist rants on public transport that have recently gone viral.
Fucking sandbags bitches, ISIS bitches, laughing at us to go home and make a bomb on the internet, fucking bitches.
Laws can control people's actions, but they can't control people's thoughts. As racism becomes more subtle, we need to keep pressuring our institutions to change. So yes, society is a lot more tolerant than it was 50 years ago, but there is still work to do. The struggle continues. We need to stop blaming each other for our failures. You see, I am not the problem, but I bear the brunt of silly playground taunts and racist stunts. I am not the problem. I am a born academic, but they got me on the run. Now I'm branded athletic. I am not the problem. If you give me a chance, I'll teach you of Timbuktu. I can do more than dance. I am not the problem. I greet you with a smile. You put me in a pigeonhole, but I am versatile. Well, these conditions may affect me as I get older, and I am positively sure I have no chips upon my shoulders. Black is not the problem. Mother country, get it right. And just for the record, some of my best friends are white.